Hi, I'm Joe, and today we have the first of my videos I'm going to make on Lego sets that celebrate space exploration. And we're going to blast off straight into the topic with this set here, which is actually my favorite Lego set of all, the Saturn V rocket. Back in 2017, when this set was released, I wasn't following Lego that closely to know what sets were going to come out when. I just happened to look on their site one day and saw that this set existed, and it cost only $120, which I thought was very inexpensive for a set that was nearly 2,000 pieces and looked this awesome, but it was sold out. And this set immediately became my first Lego White Whale set. And for a few months, I was checking their site almost every day, waiting for this particular set to come back in stock. And about 3 months later, it finally did. I placed an order as quickly as I could. And another milestone for me is that it was the first Lego set I'd ever bought for myself that cost more than $100, which just sounds amazing because now I'm throwing more than $100 on way too many sets these days. But this was one that kind of broke me through that particular level. I got it out, and my kids and I built it together, and it was one of the most fun builds I've ever done, and still is. I actually just rebuilt this from nothing. I didn't keep anything reassembled. I had it put away in a box, and I rebuilt it, and it's still just as fun to rebuild now as it was then. I absolutely love it. And it's not just because of the build, but I love all things related to classic space, as in real classic space, not Lego classic space. If you've ever seen the miniseries that HBO did in 1998 called From the Earth to the Moon, that's one of my favorite things ever, and I rewatch that almost once a year, every year. But I also like the movie Apollo 13 and lots of other documentaries I've seen about the Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo space programs. And I'm publishing this video today, July 16th, because July 16th, 1969 was when the Apollo 11 mission blasted off from Kennedy Space Center, which of course resulted in Neil Armstrong's first walk on the moon. And coincidentally, this Lego set contains exactly 1,969 pieces to commemorate that year. So now finally, a few details about the set. The rocket here is displayed horizontally. The display stands are part of the set. And the reason I have it displayed horizontally right now is because I'm taking a horizontal video. And I will show you what it looks like stood up in a little bit. It's just hard to get the whole rocket into the video. Here is the entire rocket stood up, and it's pretty much exactly 1 meter tall. The rocket is supposed to be 1 to 111th the scale because the actual Saturn V rocket was 111 meters tall. Now we'll look at the rocket bit by bit. The bottom section, or stage 1, is half the build. There are 12 bags in the build. The first 6 are building stage 1. And that's where you've got the 5 main engines, which we'll look at that closer when I put the rocket back horizontal. And you've got fins here on 4 sides. And if I have any complaint at all about this model, it's these fins. They tend to come off kind of easily, even though they're 2x3 connections there. They do tend to get knocked off when I move the rocket around. Not that I do that very often. That's the only complaint I have about this set. The center of the rocket, the core, is kind of an 8-stud diameter core that has lots of stud on the side pieces, brackets, and also clip and bar connections and some ball joint connections that help you attach these sloped pieces all the way around and give the rocket this nice round look. In fact, you'll barely see any exposed studs on the entire rocket. The build is a bit repetitive because all 4 sides are very close to the same. I think on stage 1 they are the same, with the exception of some of these details here up and down the side on opposite sides. So instead of 4 identical sections, you've got 2 identical sections in the side. All of these tiles that you see that say USA or have the American flag on them or United States, those are all prints. This was in the good old days of Lego Ideas, back when sets that cost over $100 were very rare and they never had stickers. You also have a lot of these builds here where you've got these grill pieces all the way around. I don't know what the piece count on the grill pieces is, but it's got to be in the hundreds. And those are connected through clip and bar connections on the inside. The next section, and it's really hard to tell, but this is actually a separation point here between stage 1 and stage 2. And the stages do come apart, and I'll show you that in a little bit. But stage 2 here is bags 7 through 10. So really, 10 out of the 12 bags are dedicated to just the 2 sections. And it's a similar style build. We've just got United States written out instead of USA here. We've got another row of these grill tiles and some other details with these types of Technic pieces or cylinder pieces here. I'm not sure, this is the only print like this in the whole set. I'm not sure what that represents. Up near the top, you have the 3rd stage, or what I think they call the S4B, which is the stage that carries the astronauts from Earth orbit to the moon. And that also separates very neatly. Then finally, at the top, you've got the actual astronaut compartment. The command module is just this bit right here. And this is the command service module, which is the engine and all the parts that keep the astronauts alive. And in here, this kind of cone section is where the lunar module is stored until the astronauts get it while they're on their way to the moon. Then finally at the top, you've got the abort stage, which is just a rocket that is designed that if the astronauts pull an abort during the launch process, this rocket will ignite and actually lift up the crew in the command module and carry them out to safety. In addition to the rocket, you've got this little vignette here that includes the lunar module in the correct scale with the rocket. That's supposed to depict where the lunar module landed on the moon. And you've actually got some microfigures here to represent astronauts. And of course, only 2 astronauts actually walked on the moon. The 3rd astronaut, Michael Collins, was flying the command module while Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin walked on the moon. And this 4th one back here is just an extra piece. But these little microfigures are nicely printed. And you've even got this clear tile here showing the American flag where it was placed after the landing. The module itself has 4 pearl gold legs and some drum lacquered gold cheese wedge pieces here that kind of mimic the foil that was along the outside to protect the lunar module from excessive heat from the sun. And you've got this printed tile here that shows the hatch where the astronauts would have come out. And there's not a whole lot of other detail around the other sides. But there is this cross-axle hole at the top, and there's a use for that I'll show you in just a minute. And finally, we've got another scene showing the splashdown of the command module, because after this entire huge rocket goes to space, the only part that comes back is this little cone piece here that has the astronauts in it. It's got this blue piece here to represent the ocean where the command module would have landed. Around the edge, these orange pieces here are linked together to make it look like the inflatable portion that keeps the command module afloat. And I don't remember if these balls here at the top are supposed to be the parachutes or more flotation devices, because actually recovering the command module was not an immediate process. There wasn't a boat, right next door. Sometimes it might take an hour or 2. So you got to make sure your astronauts don't sink to the bottom of the ocean. And you also want to make them easy to find. And that's why there's such bright colors here on these flotation devices. Then the last portion of the build is just these stands. 2 of them are exactly the same. One is a little bit higher because if you look at the rocket, for stage 1 and stage 2, it's the same diameter. But for the S4B, or what I think of as stage 3, it is a little bit narrower. So you need the taller stand to keep the rocket level while it's being displayed horizontally. And there you see it horizontally, where you've got the 2 same height stands holding up stage 1, while the S4B stage is being held up by the taller one. Looking at the back of stage 1, we've got 5 engines, which use these bucket pieces and other cone pieces, but also there's a lot of detail on the inside. I don't know if I'd call that greebling, but it certainly looks like things that belong on the bottom of the Saturn V rocket. The actual mechanics of how the engines work is beyond my knowledge, but that doesn't mean I don't appreciate all the detail the designers have put back here. Now, I wouldn't say that this meter-tall rocket actually has play features, but it definitely has some educational features because it actually does separate neatly into the various stages. I'll start off here by separating stage 2 from stage 1, and if I can remember where it went, I think it's right here. Yep. And if we look here, we've got our 5 stage 2 engines that will start firing as soon as stage 1 has been discarded. And you can see here that stage 1 is held with stage 2 using these red clip pieces. And on stage 2, you've got the gray bars. Once stage 2 is discarded, you've got what I called the S4B, and that has just this single engine. But that is also held together, again, by these red clips and gray bars, and it actually holds together really solidly. And this single engine then is actually what fires to take the astronauts from low Earth orbit into lunar orbit. Then finally, the last part to separate here is at the top, and this is hard to make work correctly, so we'll see if I can get it this time, and apparently not. But this little compartment here is where the lunar module fits, and it does fit in there. It's just hard to open without the lunar module coming out of place. And what would normally happen is this piece here, the command module, which would have jettisoned the abort rocket before it got this far, but it would turn around and actually dock with the lunar module and then carry it the rest of the way to the moon. In fact, here is the command and service module, where I've, in this case, gone ahead and replaced the top piece with the piece from the splashdown vignette, and it's got this little cross axle sticking out, and that's where that cross axle hole in the lunar module comes in, because if you wanted to actually show it docked, you could go ahead and connect here, and next thing you know, you have your combined command and service module and lunar module on the way to the moon. Thanks for watching my video about the Saturn V rocket, or as I also call it, my favorite Lego set. Do any of you have this set, or do any of you have a strong interest in the history of the Apollo program? If you do, feel free to leave a comment and tell me your favorite thing about this set, or what you think that could have been done better, or if you just want to talk about some of your favorite memories of the Apollo program. The Apollo program ended shortly after I was born, so I didn't live through it, but I've always been very interested in it and amazed by what was accomplished with the technology of the 1960s and early 70s, and how, if I have read correctly, the Saturn V rocket remains to this day the most powerful man-made machine ever created. I have several more sets I'm looking forward to building and showing off later this summer, but until then, remember, today is a good day to build.